This screencast will show you how to build and populate a table in Microsoft SQL Server. There are two parts. Part 1, the basics, and Part 2, how to build and populate your table. Now for Part 1. In order to perform the tasks shown here, you'll need to have SQL Server installed on your local machine or on a server that you have access to. You'll also need to have Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio installed on your computer. Mac users, I'm afraid you're going to have to sit this one out, unless you run Parallels or Boot Camp with Windows. Before we get into the nuts and bolts of building and populating a table, let's go over some basics. What is a table? If you've ever worked with Excel or any other spreadsheet program, you've worked with tables. You can also create tables in Word, as I've done here. Tables are simply sets of columns that hold the data elements or fields of your data set, and rows that are the sets of fields that pertain to a specific entity, a customer, for example. Here is a table of customers. The columns or fields are customer number, name, street address, city, state, and zip code. In SQL Server, we'll have to pay attention to the type of data we can allow in each column. The common data types are integer, which are negative and positive whole numbers and zero; character, which are text, including letters, numbers, punctuation, and special characters; decimal and money, which are numbers with decimal places; and date and time is pretty self-explanatory. When you define a table, you should give it a key. A key is a column that uniquely identifies each row, and in this case, each customer. Keys come into play when you combine content from one table with another. In this example, you have a transaction table that you can link to the customer table on customer number to create a report of all the transactions for each customer. This concludes Part 1, the basics. Let's proceed to Part 2, how to build and populate your table. First, you will need to launch SQL Server Management Studio. You'll find it in the Start menu under SQL Server 2008. When you launch Management Studio, you'll be prompted for your server name, username, and password. Click Connect, and you'll be taken to the default view of your SQL Server instance. Choose a database to work on by clicking on the plus sign next to Databases to expand it. A list of databases will appear. I already created a database called Test1, so I'll go ahead and open it. To create a table, I'll right-click on the Tables folder and choose New Table. As you can see, Management Studio prompts me to enter the first column of the table. My first column is customer number, so I'll go ahead and enter that. I'll give it a data type of int for integer and uncheck Allow Nulls. Since this is the key to my table, I don't want it to ever have no value. That's what null means, having no value. I'll tab to the next row and enter my next column, name. I'll give it a data type of char 50, which is 50 bytes of character or text. I'll uncheck Allow Nulls, since every customer has to have a name. Next, I'll define street address, again as char 50. This time I'll allow nulls. Why would I allow no value for street address? Well, in case I don't have that information available just yet, but still want to create a customer. On to the next column, city. I'll define this column as char 50 as well, leaving plenty of room for the city name. Like street address, and for the same reason, I'll allow nulls. Next, I'll define the state column. This time I'll make it char 2 to force the entry of two-digit state notation. I'll also allow nulls. Last, I'll define the column for zip code. I'll make it char 10 to allow for zip plus 4 notation, which usually includes a dash in the middle. This definition is flexible enough to allow for the older 5-digit or the newer zip plus 4 format for customer zip codes. I'll allow nulls for zip code as well. Okay, so now we have a table defined. I'll designate my key by clicking the space to the left of the column name. I'll right-click and choose Set Primary Key. You'll know that the column has been designated as the primary key because a little gold key will appear in the space to the left. To save my table definition, I'll close out of the Table Creation panel. Management Studio will prompt me for a table name. I'll call it Customer and click OK. I can verify that my table was created by expanding the Tables folder. Yep, there it is, Customer. Okay, now that I have my table defined, I'd like to populate it. I'll right-click on the customer table and choose Edit Top 200 Rows. I'll click in my first column and enter a customer number. Management Studio gives me a little warning icon with the column. It says this cell has not been committed to the database. Keep that in mind and we'll see that change when we go to the next row. I'll populate the rest of my columns. And I'll hit Enter when I finish the row. This commits or writes my row of data to the database, and I'm ready to enter the next row. I'll go ahead and enter the rest of my data. I'm going to leave some of my columns as null. Because they were defined as allow nulls, I can get away with it. Okay, I'm done for now. Now I'll exit the data entry panel. There's no prompt to save my data as Management Studio automatically did that every time I hit enter. Now I'll right-click on my table in the Tables folder to see if my data is there. I'll choose Select Top 1000 Rows, which is an easy way to inspect the contents of my table, and sure enough, there's the data that I entered, with null values for the cells I didn't populate. So that's how you build and populate a table in SQL Server. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. So long for now.